Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back before the Hull game with Martin. Hey mate.
Hello Gav, looking forward to a bumper crowd and a good game on Good Friday hopefully.
Hopefully it is another Good Friday. I was reading something on our website this week from Paddy Hollis that Good Friday traditionally is a good day for Sunderland. We tend to win more often than not, which probably means now we've highlighted it that we're going to lose. But there we go. We're playing Hull on Friday. And fingers crossed, we managed to come out on the other end of it. They're sort of milling around. I just said to you before we came on air, in that area where I expected us to be really this season. They're far enough away from relegation to be safe, but they're not going to do anything. They're sort of milling about, which is probably a disappointment for Hull because at the start of the season, all you ever heard about Hull was how they were going to take the championship on. They were throwing money at getting out of the league and they'd signed all of these players and had put quite a lot of investment into the playing side of things, yet they really have done nothing of note this season. So I'm not really sure what to make of this game, if I'm honest. Like us, they don't have any strikers. Like us, they've got very little to play for. And it means it's either going to be a very boring game or we could be on the precipice of a Sunderland tonking in terms of, giving a team a good tonking, I mean, because we haven't done that really this season. It's felt like at times it's been coming and it never has, and it would be nice to maybe give someone a good scudding at home. But yeah, I mean, this is a strange game, isn't it? I'm not really sure what to make of it.
No, it is a strange game, but I just want to go back to Paddy's article about Good Friday being a good day for Sunderland, because I've been scarred by Mike Sheeran, QPR, in I think 1998 on Good Friday when he scored 2 goals in the last quarter of an hour for QPR against us at home after Quinny had put us 2-0 up. And that kind of scuppered or set us on a little bit of a bad run of form that scuppered our automatic promotion chances that year. And obviously we had the Charlton heartache that followed, which I hold Mike Sheeran directly responsible for.
So, yeah, I was going to say, you're blaming him for that, are you?
Oh, 100%. It wasn't Lionel Perez's fault. It was Mike Sheeran's. No, look, this is going to be a tough game, I think, isn't it? And it was short of Arveladze was the manager of Hull at the start of the season. I think, as you say, they chucked a whole load of money investing in the playing squad, and it hasn't really worked out for them. And I think, looking at it from the outside in, they've kind of done the same thing as we've been guilty of it in the past, where you give one manager a whole load of money, results don't follow immediately, so you get rid of him, and you bring another manager in who's got a completely different style of play. And he's now trying to figure out how to get a bunch of players who haven't been assembled to play in that exact way, to play that sort of football. And, we've done an interview on the site with a Hull fan from the brilliantly named podcast To Hull and Back. And he's sort of saying, the players are having a little bit of a struggle playing the formation and the system that Liam Rossini wants them to play. And, they're looking towards the summer as being a period of change where he gets rid of a few players, brings some of his own in. So they're kind of on that cycle that we've been on previously, and it was quite nice to read another club making those mistakes and not being us for a change. But they're in a terrible run of form. I think they've won 1 out of 11. They haven't got any strikers, as you said at the top. I think they've scored 7 goals in the past 11 games. So on paper, this is a good one for us to get 3 points. And Tony Mowbray has been really positive about this run of fixtures coming up. He's talking about them all being winnable games and all being games that we could get 3 points from. So yeah, it's a good chance for us to enter that last stretch of the season on a positive note.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that. I mean, I've said this repeatedly. I don't think that there's anything to really fear, and I think that I quite like in a way that recently, anyways, we've sort of. I think he's managed the expectations of everybody quite well. Where he had a little period, Mowbray, where I was a bit disappointed with some of the stuff he was saying. Where recently, I actually think the way he's approached, the way he talks about us, it's been the right way. Because if you look at it, and I said this to Chris, if we win against Hull and we win against Cardiff, then you're looking at the Birmingham game and people are going to be talking about the playoffs again because you've got Birmingham at home, Huddersfield at home, 2 teams who are struggling. I just think that this is quite an important game, actually. I know that it looks at the minute like we're probably a little bit too far from the playoffs to be really serious contenders. But you know how things are with Sunderland. We're quite capable of being that team who go on a mad run and end up in there somehow. or even just flirt with the idea of it happening. These next 4
Yeah.
games, like I say, 3 of them are at home: Hull, Birmingham, Huddersfield. We've got an away game at Cardiff. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could win all of those games. At the same time, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we could lose all of those games, because more often than not this season, when we've played somebody who we think we should be beaten at home, we don't. So
No, it
is quite interesting looking at how things could pan out. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche in football, isn't it? You can only look at the next game and think about the next game. And to be honest, I think that's true of this, because if we don't beat Hull, then nobody's going to be talking about any sort of playoff chances. We're going to be writing the season off, I think. Hull is an interesting game at this stage of the season, just because, like I said, they've got nothing really to play for. They're struggling with injuries. They've got no strikers. And you look at them and you think they're probably in a transition period where maybe some of those players who are starting at the weekend already know they're probably going to be leaving the club, or that they're already looking over their shoulders a little bit and thinking, I'm away soon. And I don't care what anyone says, that it does affect performances, because that hunger and desire which we showed against Burnley, which I wasn't expecting to see, was present, because these players still have a lot to play for and prove at Sunderland. At Hull, different sort of theme, really. They're thinking very differently about how things go forward from here. And like I said, interesting to me as an outsider, because we did hear quite a lot about how Hull were already in their mini revolution at the start of the season, and the way that they were signing players and the way that they were dishing out big wages to certain players. I think Seri, the central midfielder, I might be wrong, but he's one of the highest paid players in the division.
Yeah, I think so.
For a team sitting 18th in the table, that's not great, really. So it's an interesting one. I think, for me personally, I feel as though that we have to win this game, because, and we've talked about this a little bit recently, the home form hasn't been great this year. And to me, everything we do from this point is to set ourselves up for next season. If we somehow end up in the playoffs, then brilliant. I don't think anybody's expecting that to happen. So really, I'm treating these games as the opportunity to build for next season. So I want to see players like Ekwar starting again. I want to see Lee Hadji get more minutes. I want to see the team shape up in the way we want them to play next year. I want to see Barr on the pitch. I want to see the home form improve. That's a big thing for me. I just think now we've got, 4 home games left before the end of the season. That has to improve, because if we are going to be serious promotion contenders in the Championship next season, then the home form has to be pointed and spot on, and it isn't at the minute. So yeah, big game.
Yeah, it is a big game. You're right in terms of using these games to not only build for next season, but also see where we get to this season. And if you're looking at how we improve next season, as you say, the home form is a massive thing to improve on. We've been pretty good away from home. I think that's where the pressure's not on us to break teams down, and we can counter attack and all that sort of stuff. I do think we would have had a far better home record this season if we had Ross Stewart up front, or a striker up front, to relieve some of that pressure sometimes and change the game. But obviously that's kind of by the by, and we're dealing with what we have. And as I say, like, Hull splashed out some money. And one player I'm interested in seeing on Friday is Adama Traore. It's not the one that Jake Clark-Salter chopped in half a few years ago. It's a lad who cost Monaco 14 million euros a few years ago, and he joined Hull on deadline day, but he only made his debut at the end of February for them. He's obviously been out injured, but he's got some good reviews as a very sort of talented midfield player. So it'll be interesting to see him and how he plays on Friday. And I think it'll be a challenge in terms of the style of play that Hull have as well. Reading on their fans' forums and the match reports and stuff like that, it seems like they've got a bit of a style of play like we had under Poyet. Where you're keeping the ball, retaining the ball at the back, passing it around, looking, trying to draw the team out, pass the ball into midfield, and do all that sort of stuff when you're in possession. And I think we've been actually pretty good against teams like that. Like Burnley tried to do it a lot last Friday, and we're good on the press, and we charged them down, and got a couple of opportunities. The one where Gelhardt nipped the ball off one of their centre halves, wasn't it, and almost got into a position to have a shot. So it's going to be a challenge. But as you say, like, we've got to improve our home form. Like, that's the one thing that's held us back. And to be honest, to be in the position where we are with the home form that we've had is remarkable, really. So these 4 home games that we've got remaining this season, it would be lovely to see us win 3 or 4 of them and just, change the mentality of the players or the confidence of the players when playing at home, because like we've seen in the past, haven't we, where we've had bad home form and it kind of snowballs sometimes. And we're not in that situation now, but we need to be strong and on the front foot and confident when we go out and play at the Stadium of Light.
We do, and it's been tough, to be honest, because we all know a big reason why, and Tony Mowbray has mentioned this week, big reason why we do struggle at the Stadium of Light is because teams come here and there is a blueprint for playing against Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. It's mainly to sit behind the ball, waste time, frustrate the crowd, and see how it goes from there. And it doesn't always work, but it does work. That's the problem. It does work quite often. And it works for teams who are actually used to sitting behind the ball. So teams who are struggling, more often than not, will play against teams every week and be used to not having the ball, be used to just running side to side, counter-attacking, having 3 in midfield and just sort of trying to win the physical battles and stuff. And that's been the big struggle at the Stadium of Light this season and last season, really, in League One, is that when teams come here, we tend to struggle against that type of side. And even good teams have came here and played that way. And we've seen against Norwich, we saw at Burnley, that when we get the opportunity to play a little bit differently, when we get the opportunity to play like maybe some of those teams do against us, sit back, counter-attack, work very hard, close down in their half as well as in our half, press from the front. When we get to do all of those things, we're really effective. We look like a team who, probably sounds a bit daft, but we look like a team who, in the event that we did somehow get promoted to the Premier League, that we would be really suited to playing every week against teams who just come at us. Like, you can sort of see in the style of players we've got, that would be effective. And I guess the thing with the Championship is that you're not going to get that opportunity most weeks. You're not going to play Burnley and Norwich every week. You're playing teams like Hull, Wigan, Bristol City or whoever. And you have to have a different way of playing. And I know Tony Mowbray has talked before about how we've only really got one way of playing. But to me, and this is something you touched on when we spoke earlier in the week, when you look at somebody like a Pierre-Emerick, who's got a little bit something different about him, I don't see why we can't mix it up a bit. Like, in this game against Hull, I think you can pretty much predict how they're going to play. Regardless of how else they normally play. They're not daft. They'll have watched the tapes of the teams who've came here and got results. They know what they've got to do. They know they're going to have to sit back. They're going to have to soak up a bit of pressure and frustrate us. And we've got to also plan for that. We've got to know that's what's going to happen. And I'm hoping that we don't just revert to type and play sort of like a midfield two of Mishu and Neil and try and pass them off the park. 'Cause I'm not sure that's going to work. I think we might have to give up the ball a little bit more. And we might have to just pick a team that can physically compete more so than technically compete, because we know we can compete technically. So I would like to see a bit of compromise on the style actually in this game.
They're going to do exactly what you have described. You look at their record since Rossini came in, and they've drawn 10 out of 22 games. I think in the last 11 they've scored 7, as I said before, and conceded 11. So they don't have high scoring games as such. And like 3 of those goals that they conceded, I think, were away at Norwich, and 3 of them were at home to Burnley. So if you take those 2 games out where they conceded 6, they've let in 5 in 9 games, so they don't concede too many at all. So it's going to be an interesting challenge in terms of style of play. And those are the sort of games, aren't they? Like if we get on the front foot and score a goal in the first 15-20 minutes, it puts that game plan that the opposition come with out the window, because they've got to come and open up a little bit more and have a go. And sometimes that works in our favour, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's going to be interesting, isn't it, in terms of the team selection? Because as you say, you're kind of caught in this middle bit, aren't you, where the playoffs are still there. So do you pick your strongest 11 for Friday and forget about everything else at the minute? You just go with what's the strongest team that you've got? Or do you have that mentality about building for next season? There's likes of Joe Gelhardt won't be here next season. Ahmad, I reckon there's a chance we get him on loan next season, but at present he's not going to be here next season. So do you use these 7 games to give those players like Ekwa more time on the pitch, Lahaji, Bar, give them more experience? Or do you stick with the likes of Pritchard? Do you stick with the likes of the other experienced players that we've got to just go, okay, we're going after the 3 points on Friday?
The impression I get from recent weeks is that he's going to pick Bar, Ekwa, and what I'm hoping actually is that we see the introduction of even more. So I really want to see what Lihaji can do, because it's unfair really for any player, sort of, especially when they've got his experience, a very limited experience, to just give him like sort of 5-10 minutes at the end of games. He can't impact a game doing that. You know, it's and we need to see more. We need to see more from him.
I jotted down my starting 11 for what I think we could go with on Friday before we start recording this. And Lahaji's the one I've got in from the start.
Right.
So I think there's a chance,
in place of who?
In place of Pritchard from Friday's team.
Right.
So I think I reckon you might chuck Roberts into that sort of middle role and put Ahmad all the way up front and leave Gelhardt out and put Clark on one side and Lahaji on the other.
I wouldn't be against it. I don't know if I can see him doing it, just because of how well Pritchard played against Burnley. But I mean, I've been waiting for him to maybe not go with Gelhardt for a long time now, and he just keeps picking him. And it's not like, some people might listen to me and think I've got some sort of agenda against him. I don't. And I actually think at Burnley he done his job like everybody else did. That's the difficulty, is that, you know, in a game like that where you're pressing from the front and most of the time you're just running around, Gelhardt's fine because he's very good at running around, but it's the other side of things that he's not so great at. And in this game, when we're going to have more of the ball, I would rather have a technician up there, somebody who can do something with the ball, than him, really. So I wouldn't be against dropping him, but I think it'll be interesting. I'm really interested actually to see how much game time we continue to give Gelhardt between now and the end of the season, because I think before the Burnley game, we talked about this and we said, you know, after Burnley is a very different part of the season than before Burnley. I think the Burnley game was a bit of a milestone for Sunderland, in that we had to get to that point. That was going to be a tough game. We had to pick a certain type of team. Depending on how we got through it, we then change things up after that, because like I said before, you look at the run of games we've got coming up, and on paper they look good games for us. They look like games where we can afford to try things. Burnley, I think, wasn't the type of game where you start dropping players, and we maybe needed that little bit more experience in the side. So, I'm really interested actually to see what type of team he goes with, because I think it could indicate where he goes from here, from the rest of the season, because there is a chance he'll drop some of these players.
I think with the Pritchard thing, he's had a little bit of an injury, hasn't he? He's kind of not been able to train properly during the week, so that might come into it. And with Gelhardt, like it's obviously not working, him playing right up top. And I think Mowbray has took the attitude of him playing himself into form, which he hasn't. I think he did all right against Burnley. That was a type of game that suits him. I think QPR away was another one of his better performances, and that was a similar game where he put a lot of work
and Norwich.
in, pressed them. Norwich, he obviously missed that chance at Norwich, didn't he? But he still did all of that other stuff around. Yeah, and I actually think it's while you might think, well, he's being fair with Gelhardt by giving him a chance, I actually think it's being unfair on him to keep playing him in the same position where he clearly doesn't work. And if he wanted to keep Gelhardt in the side, I would really like to see him push Ahmad all the way up front and let Gelhardt play deeper and just see what he does from a bit of a deeper position, because we're not getting anything out of him playing as an out-and-out striker. So whether he does that, or whether he, to my mind, if you're going to do that, we're far better off giving Lahaji a game in that front, like that three behind the striker, or giving Bar more game time in that position, because I think Mowbray earlier in the season, he talked about Bar as being a replacement for Ahmad, which kind of took us by surprise at the time, because we'd only seen Bar play in a deeper midfield role. But you can kind of see it to an extent. He's got nice feet. He can play the ball. He can shoot. So I think giving our players who are going to be here next season more time on the field is probably the way I would go. But we'll see how Tony Mowbray goes.
Yeah, well, on the team selection, obviously you mentioned Pritchard. had missed, I think he missed the open training day that they did during the week, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
But Mowbray had said that he should be good for the games this weekend. Huggins, another player who pulled up in the warm-up, that was brought up in the press conference. I think Mowbray just sort of said, brushed it off and said he needs a pre-season. Don't think he wants anyone to read too much into it, but it's a little bit worrying that Huggins, every time he seems ready to come back in, he seems to have another issue. And yeah, I think they've got a duty of care maybe there with him. He's maybe a little bit, I don't know what it is really. We've seen this before in the past with other players, haven't we? Reminds us a little bit of Mickey Bridges when he broke his leg all them years ago. Didn't come back the same lad really.
Well, I think with Huggins, reading or listening to Mowbray's comments, it seems more psychological than physical with him, where you've kind of got that, that he's been out for a long time, hasn't he? He's out for the best part of a year, and I think he came back in that Birmingham game, didn't he, at St Andrews, and played really well.
Yeah.
And we don't see him for a couple of months, and he comes back for, I think he came off the bench at Fulham, and then we don't see him again. And in the reserve game, under 21 game on Monday, I think, or Tuesday, wasn't it? He said he felt his hamstring in the warm up, so he didn't take part in that game. But Tony Mowbray said, he's probably been very overcautious in terms of how his body's feeling, and it kind of sounds like Huggins doesn't yet have the confidence in his own body after being through all of that injury trouble and that time out. So, as you say, I think a good pre-season where he regains that confidence, builds that strength up. And he is a good player. From what we've seen, a little of what we've seen, he is a bloody good player. And if we can get him fit, that would be a really good battle between him and Trey Hume next season.
Yeah,
for that right back spot.
Yeah, he's 22-year-old as well, so it's not like he's, had he been 23, 24, 25 and having all these issues, we might feel a little bit differently about him, but we at least owe him the chance to have a pre-season. I think that's probably the best way forward for Huggins. See how he does after a pre-season. If he's fit and firing and confident, and importantly, competing and giving us something in the first team and playing in those games in pre-season and doing well, then there's no reason why you wouldn't keep him around, because he can play left back, he can play right back, he can play centre or midfield.
Midfield, yeah.
But if after a 4, 5, 6 week period of really intense training, and they're looking at him and they're like, he needs to go, he needs to go out on loan, he needs to go somewhere and just try and get some confidence, then that might be the best way forward. We're in a very, low pressure situation with Huggins, I think. We've got enough fullbacks at first team level to be fine. We don't have to worry about him coming back as a matter of urgency. And yeah, I think everybody's hoping that this time in, 3-4 months, that we're looking at him as a real first team player, because you're right, he's got talent. Other than Huggins, then Cirkin and Joe Anderson, they both played a full 90 in that game for the 21s. I think Mowbray's been quoted this week as saying that he's probably going to loan him out at the start of next season, which tells you he's probably not going to feature much, if at all, in the first team between now and the end of the season. Not really a huge surprise. I think, there's a big thing around maybe getting some of these lads experience, and if we can't give him it, then it would be right probably for him to go somewhere else for 6 months and sort that out. But Cirkin is the interesting one for me, because he hasn't played a great deal recently, but he got a full 90 minutes and got through that fine. At times this season has looked like one of our best players. At times we've never seen him because he's been injured. And then you go back to the Burnley game, Lyndon Gooch gets man of the match, playing left back out of position. What do you do? Because long term, we're talking about long term before, we're talking about building for next season. Lyndon Gooch ain't going to be our left back next season. Dennis Cirkin is. So how do you approach it? Because to me, it's a tough decision, this. We've got 2 games this weekend, and it's like, are you loyal to Gooch for playing there away from home? Or do you recognise that we need a little bit more width and balance and play a Cirkin? Or do you reckon he's more likely to give maybe Cirkin half an hour towards the end of the game and maybe shift Gooch around or take him off? I can't really work out what he's going to do here, because I think I would like to see Cirkin play there, but I acknowledge that Lyndon Gooch has deserved his spot for this game.
Cirkin's, he's going to be our left back next season. He's going to play there more often than not if he's fit. And I think if you cast your mind back to sort of November, December time, there was even talk about Spurs coming back in for him in the January transfer window and wanting him back, wasn't it? So
yeah, and Brentford looking at him as well. So other Premier League teams were keeping an eye, yeah.
So I think it's easy to kind of forget that when players have been out for a while. I think Cirkin's a cracking player. I think the fact that we've got 2 games in 4 days over this weekend and we're travelling to Cardiff on Monday makes that whole decision a bit easier for Mowbray, because I don't think either Gooch nor Cirkin will play a full 90 minutes in both those games. Both have just come back from long-term injuries. So I think I would stick with Gooch for Friday's game against Hull. I think, reward him for his performance. I thought he was brilliant on Friday against Burnley. I thought he was absolutely superb. And I think it's the right message to send to people as well. If you train well, you play well, you'll keep your place. And Mowbray is loyal to players like that. So I think Gooch will keep his place on Friday. I would not at all be surprised though if Cirkin starts on Monday and Gooch drops out, just to give them both that chance of building up the fitness. And then, who knows what happens after that.
Yeah.
But I think, I would keep Gooch in the team for Friday.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on it, because I think the game suited him on Friday last week against Burnley. It suited him because he just had to battle, he had to defend. Some of his last-ditch tackling and stuff was fantastic. But this game, where it's going to be a little bit more open, he's all right foot, so it's difficult because we're going to need him to. We're going to need width, and it's.
So are we better off actually? Are we actually better off playing Cirkin at home on Friday and Gooch away at Cardiff?
Possibly, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I don't know. Again, a bit of a conundrum for Mowbray. He's got to try and work out what to do, but I'm happy with either situation. I think, if you had to pin us down and get us to pick what I would like to see, ideally, it would be Cirkin, but you're right, it does send the right message to the players that if they perform well, they stay in the team. However, what I would caveat that with is that Luke O'Nien was man of the match at QPR in central midfield, and then hasn't played there since. So, and I'm still bitter about that. But I just think, I think that the important thing is that we've got 2 games. We've got a lot of travelling to do between those games, and we'll just have to try and balance the squad up. We don't want more injuries as well. That's the other thing. I totally forgot what you just mentioned it there. Gooch has been out a while. Cirkin's been out a while. We can't flog them both, so there's the opportunity to mix things up there. Other than that, though, the team pretty much picks itself, I think. I know you can probably debate who plays in midfield. You've got Ekwa, who did really well there, but I've got a feeling he won't play. I've just got a feeling he won't. I think at home, Mowbray likes Michu and Neil, so I've got a feeling that'll be the midfield too. What do you think on that?
I'd love to see Michu and Ekwa play together. I think they actually really complement each other in the style of play that they have. And I think at home is probably a good place to do it. Like, if you kind of look longer term as well, like that could be a partnership that does really, really, really well for us at centre midfield. So I'd be intrigued to see how they played together.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, Dan Neal's barely missed a minute this season, has he? But again, 2 games coming up in a short space of time. Wouldn't be surprised if he maybe tried something different to give maybe Neil a rest. You don't know. Barr, I would imagine, will play some part. He seems to be a bit of a favourite at the minute, doesn't he? So it'd be nice to see him coming in, maybe. Other than that, though, team pretty much picks itself. The defence picks itself. It's going to be one of Cirkin or Gooch, probably Gooch, with O'Nien, Bart, Hume. Then, like we've just said there, I'm going to go with Neil and Michu just because he seems to like them as the middle 2. Probably Roberts on the right, Clark on the left. I would like to see Barr play, but I've got a feeling he won't. I think it'll be Ahmad and Gelhardt. I think it'll probably be that as the front 2. So it's what do you think? What do you think he's going to go with? I know you are the starting 11 guru on Roker Report. So
the guru with a terrible track record for getting it right. No, it's a difficult one. I think if I was putting myself in Tony Mowbray's shoes normally, I wouldn't be surprised if Pritchard started. And I think, he obviously likes Clark and Roberts either side of the attack. He's been very loyal to Gelhardt. But he did say a few weeks ago that after the Burnley game, he would start experimenting and giving players a chance and seeing what they had to offer. So I think there'll be at least one of those players out of Ekwa, Lahaji and Barr starts. Because obviously Jefferson Bennett's dislocated his shoulder. He's out of the equation for the rest of the season. I think he's having an operation to pin it back in, the same operation that 09 had about 18 months ago, which obviously has worked pretty well. Like I would love to see Michu and Ekwa in centre midfield as that sort of bit of an experiment. And again, I just don't see any value in us playing Gelhardt. I see like, there's nothing for us to gain from it now. If he was scoring a goal every other game, you keep him in, but he's not, and he's not performing. I think where he offers us good value is away from home, where he shuts people down and does the legwork off the ball. So I'd like to see us mix that up. I'm going to go for Roberts, Lahaji and Clark and Ahmad forming some sort of front four in, chuck the players up in the air and see which positions they land in, really. But it'll be exciting to watch, I think.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a big crowd. I think you mentioned at the top. I think already as we record this, there's 39,000 tickets sold so far. That'll obviously jump up a bit with it being a bank holiday, you'd imagine. There'll be quite a big crowd there. But the man in the middle who, last time out, when he refereed Sunderland, spoiled things, was Keith Stroud. He sent Luke 09 off against Swansea. It wasn't a great performance, but I think he's not got a bad record this season, has he, with us?
No,
he's refed us 3 times. Yeah. We beat Wigan at home and Bristol City away, which you ref, but then obviously the Swansea game was a bit of a nightmare. So
he's also the referee when we beat Hull in that awful championship season that we finished bottom of the table under Chris Coleman. He was also the referee in that game. I think Soro scored the winner.
I totally blanked that season from your memory. Thanks. On the subject of that, and this is a tangent and a half, but did you see what Brighton's manager said about Jason Steele on the subject of that season? Called him one of the most talented goalkeepers in Europe, I think. Amazing. Just can't get over that sort of that transition he's on, being a first teamer in a Premier League team, no doubt, that are going for a European spot. So just shows that in life everyone's a winner at some point. Hopefully we're the winners this weekend. We've got a game on Monday, which I'm sure we will be back to preview as well as react to this one. So, hopefully in that busy bank holiday weekend period, we can fit in a couple of podcasts. Cheers, Martin. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Cheers, Gav.
And thanks to the listeners. Oh, before we go, score prediction. Didn't ask for one.
Well, and the other thing we haven't mentioned, we're going to be wearing red shorts on Friday as part of the Foundation of Light charity thing, isn't it? It's a big difference campaign. Show what a little change can do to make a big difference. I would have much preferred to see us wearing white shorts, far more traditional, but red shorts.
Yeah.
I've in our score predictions that we do before the game on the website, I've gone for probably an overly optimistic 3-0 win. I think it's one of those games that if we get an early goal, we could sort of have a quite a nice afternoon. So 3-0 is my very optimistic Easter egg fueled prediction.
I'll go for a 1-0. 1-0 to Sunderland.
I'll be happy with that.
Okay. So, I'll try me out again. Yeah, we're off now. We'll see you all after the whole game. Hopefully talking about another 3 points for Sunderland. And we'll catch you all later. Cheers.